I went to court, I was found guilty, and I was given 11 years, and I was sent to Langata Women's Prison. This room was one large room that's supposed to carry maybe 35, 40, but you'd find that you're 70 to 80 congested in that room. So that toilet is one that is shared by all these people at the edge of the room. So there is someone there bathing, there's someone there doing their stuff inside the toilet, there's someone there who's probably trying to brush their teeth, another one is probably washing the clothes. It is just by God's grace that people didn't die of cholera then, but most of the time the toilets were full and the room was always stinking. And when I went to US, the prison that I went to, Arlington County Jail, I didn't know that I was in prison, Justus. I was perplexed. I said, what? They take is it the temperature, the blood, to just check if your health is good. I was brought a dress from the laundry in a hanger. Oh my God, I was taken to a room. I thought, is this really, am I really in prison or it's a mistake? My room, with the remote control was on the table. I started changing channels. I went to the bathroom. I opened the tap, hot water. I said, what? I'm taking a shower right now. Then I came, within a short time, somebody knocked at the door. They said, tea or coffee? Hey? I said, tea. Hi, my name is Judith Akinyi, or Saga, as some would call me. My life has been a roller coaster of events. I have been to Langata Women's Prison, where I served a sentence of 7 years, and I also was able to go to a prison in the United States, and I witnessed the life in prison in America. My growing up was like any other normal child. We grew up in Nairobi South. I went to school in Nairobi South Primary School, but I had started at Our Lady. But I admired the uniform at Nairobi South because, they used to wear coats and ties. And I thought that was so, elegant. And I wanted to be associated with that. So I was transferred to Nairobi South Primary School. And in those days, in the 70s, the place was full of Indians. Should I call them Goans? South B was, Goan, South B, South C, if I remember. Finished college, just like any other normal girl. I got into relationships here and there, and I went with the one I loved most, although my parents didn't approve of him. But, at that age, who can tell you anything? You think you know it all, but you're just beginning, You don't even know that you're just starting. These people who are seeing what you cannot see have gone through a lot, and through experience, they can see what you cannot see. When I finished college, of course, I was employed. I did several jobs here and there before I settled for the teaching profession at the Kenya Polytechnic. Then, these days, it's Technical University College. And, before that, I had met my then-to-be husband. And I was so much in love. I believe we were both in love. So we couldn't have lived together if we were not. So we got together, we got married, we formalized everything. As much as my parents didn't like the idea, but, they say, okay, if you like that, we'll support you. But again, they told me we would have preferred the other guy. So we got married, and we got children, and the rest became history. But somewhere in the middle, life changed suddenly because he became an absentee dad. He became irresponsible. And, I was so used to, if you go back to my upbringing, first of all, I was the only child. So my parents loved me so much. So I didn't know anything but love. They took care of me, they loved me. My relatives around me showed me a lot of love. My husband, when he started, a lot of love. So by the time when things started going south, my father had then passed away. My mother was ailing. She was very sick. And, she was once a very strong woman. And it pained me to see her going down, health-wise. And then my marriage was kind of failing. I said, everything was tumbling down. I couldn't understand. He was engaged in other affairs. At some point, he even stopped, taking care of us in terms of, bringing food home and things like that. And these are things that I'd never witnessed before, because he would go for the best. If he would go to buy bread, he would look for the best quality for his children. If it was meat, he would go for the best cut. Then all of a sudden, this person, just suddenly like that. No explanation, no nothing. And I didn't know how to go back to my mother to tell her, remember what she had told me before. And then she was also ailing. And I didn't want to bring pain to her heart, knowing how much she loved me, being her only child who was so close. So I was dying with these things on my own. At work, I had colleagues, very good people. But again, I was not used to telling them my private life. That was work. I go to work and I go home. So I turned to a friend and explained to her what I was going through. And she came up with a very good idea of how we could go to, how she could help me. Because what I wanted at this juncture, after seeing all this that was happening, was to get to stand on my own without dropping the standard of my life or the lives of my children. I approached her, and to cut a long story short, the deal that I was introduced to was not what it was in the end, because what she told me is not what I finally did. The business deal that I was to venture into at first was gemstones, so my friend asked me to get a loan so that I could give her, so that she could trade it in and, give me back the money with profit. But as I said, that was not to be, because she already knew the kind of problem I was in. I think she probably checked my situation and understood so well that I was into some kind of depression. This gemstone business was never to be. Instead, it was going to be a drug trafficking business. And I do blame myself too, because if I thought through it so clearly, there were a lot of red flags. But sometimes when you are so down, you're so low, you don't think straight. So whichever way, I should have seen through it. I don't know. Some people use juju to lure people or to confuse people. I don't know. Because I have thought throughout the years, there were so many reasons why I should not have even started carrying on with that business. But I found myself there. And eventually it was a drug trafficking deal that ended up taking me to Pakistan, coming back to Nairobi, and being arrested at Jomo Kenyatta International Airport. Those days, these, drug issues were not so much, people were not so much enlightened. People didn't know so much about about drug deals and so forth. So they say that ignorance is no excuse, but I believe there are some things that one can get into without really knowing. So I get into this venture where I'm going to make a lot of money, and then I'm going to leave this guy, I'm going to carry my children, go to another house, and carry on with my life without bothering him. Let him carry on with what he wants to do. But of course, this was not to be, because when I went to Pakistan, first, I was supposed to be there for 3 to 4 days, as I've said. But when I arrived, and being as naive as I was, I went to the house, and the girl who received me, first thing she asked for was my passport. And I gave her my passport, and she said, "Can I see your ticket? I would like to see your itinerary." And I gave her the ticket. Little did I know that I was prescribing a prison sentence for myself, because without a passport, without my ticket, I could not get out of this house. And for some reason, I don't know what happens, because even in this house, when I think back, I ask myself, okay, I found myself here for a longer period than I expected. Why couldn't I shout and scream and create chaos? And, maybe the neighbors could have saved me. But, again, this was a foreign place. I'd never been to Pakistan. I'm in this house with people I thought I should trust. Up to this time, nothing is clicking in my mind, because 3, 4 days are gone. I ask her, how can I, why am I still here? I need to go. Because it was during the vacation. And I think the last 3, 4 days we were supposed to open college, within that week. So I asked her, "Madam, I would like to go because we are opening school. I didn't inform anyone that I'm traveling this far. It is just me. I knew I was going to go away and come back. I told my mom I was going to the village. My husband too, I told him I was going to the village. But you see us, we have many villages. I have the village where I was married. I have the village where I was born. There is the village of my grandparents. So it could be any village. So for my husband, I was going to my mom's home. For my mom, I was going to my husband's home. I was locked in this house for more than I expected. And by this time, of course, at the Kenya Poly, they will sack you because of absconding duties. At home, my mom is now worried, definitely. For 3, 4 days that I said I would be away are gone. So she will go to my husband to ask, where is my daughter? And my husband too, no, she said she was going to your home. Where is my wife? So it was chaos. These people took my phone. The first thing they did, you enter the house, they take your phone, anything you have, my documents, my ticket. So I had no access. And this house, there's no phone. They all have mobile, so you cannot take anyone's mobile. So I was in this house without my will for 3 months. And you can imagine, if I was depressed when I was leaving, then I was depressed. If it's not 10 or 100 times, I was so depressed, so much. The only thing she said to me was that, did you really know why you're here? Do you really know my auntie so well? Anyway, it was a bad experience. Eventually I came, and having been as green as ever in those kind of trades, and having carried whatever I was carrying, because when I left there, I was given the drugs, and I wanted my freedom. I wanted to live, and I knew that I was carrying the drugs. It's not that I didn't know, but I wanted to get out of that place. And she had also told me how dangerous and how tough her auntie is here in Kenya. So I wanted to be free. And what I had tried to solve, I had solved nothing. If anything, I'd jumped from the frying pan to the fire. But I said, let me go and at least find my mother alive. Let me go and at least embrace my children. I didn't know what was waiting for me ahead. Of course, by this time, I had been sacked from the Kenya Poly. My parents, my mom, had looked for me everywhere, police stations, mortuary, everywhere. Tried to reach anybody, whoever could have had an idea of where I was. But, so she resigned to crying, just crying every other day and getting even more ill. And hoping each day, because there is an instinct that told her that my daughter is still, my daughter is not dead. I would have felt it, It kept her going. And when I landed at Jomo Kenyatta Airport, you can imagine the first person I wanted to see, my mother and my children. But fate being fate, I was arrested because I was not as crude as those people who are used to doing these things. I was so green. I would, when I arrived at the airport in Karachi, I panicked, and I left it there, and I had a smaller bag, ladies' bags, which was also laced with some. So when I arrived at the airport, I found the policeman. They actually came for me from inside the plane. They were in plain clothes. And they told me to follow them. I alighted. I didn't even know that a police cell exists inside the airport. A lot of things were, was shock to me. And I was taken to the inside police place and interrogated, and I didn't waste time. I just told them, yes, this and this is what happened, this is what happened, but I didn't mention this lady. I was told that you just tell us everything and we'll let you go. That is how damp I was, That is how damp I was. And I said, okay. And the inspector told me, write this. And I wrote, and he said, no, not like this. He tore it and said, write like this. So he would tell me what to write, and I would write. Because after all, I'm just writing and going home. So I thought, I didn't even know the gravity of the kind of, problem I was carrying. So I wrote, and I remember a second time he said no, and I wrote a third time. And he said, okay, now this one is good. I was just incriminating myself. And of course, I was just saying, it's me, I went, I took, I did, because I was damn scared of this lady. I even told them, I said, Sinimemaliza, can I finish? Do you know it was the 24th of December? I told them, now I want to go because tomorrow is Christmas, and my mom will be so happy to see me at least, because for 3 months, Ajaniona. My kids will be so excited. That was never to be. For the next 7 years. Never to be. So I was told, okay, madam, this same gentleman, I still remember his name, but let me not mention him. He said, now come and sit in this room and wait, kidogo. So now 2 ladies came to police, and I told them, but what am I waiting for, Inspector so-and-so said I can go after writing the statement. And they said, madam, you want to go? There's nowhere you're going. You're going to sleep here. We will take you to court the following day, or I think the day after. And I said, to court? But I've already written what they asked me to write. They said, yes, you will go to court, and then after that, the judge is the one who will decide whether you will go or not. When I realized that I could not go home the following day, they asked me if there's anybody I would have wanted to contact. So I told them, yes, my mom, but she is ailing. So I beg you to be careful on the way you deliver this to her, because myself, I'm still also in shock. So it will probably affect her so much. So be kind and please relay the message to her nicely. And they went to my mom's house. They found her. And all in all, she was relieved that her daughter was alive. She was relieved that I was living. And she told them, no matter what the case, take me where she is. And they carried her in their vehicle and brought her. And your guess is as good as mine. We were not able to talk anything. We cried and cried and cried. And she asked me, my daughter, whatever you are going through, why didn't you tell me? Who taught you this? What is this I'm hearing? I'm sure even her, she had never heard of things like heroin or anything like that. Because those days, people, I think, used to talk about them in undertones. It was not so pronounced like now. And she asked me, who taught you these things? I've never known you to know anything like this. But so it was. So we cried and cried and cried. And then, of course, the police, there's time. They will tell you it's time, now you go. So we were only able to talk, I think, after, the following day. When I was taken to court, she looked for a lawyer who tried his best to get me on bond, out on bond rather, but the judge refused because after reading that I was, somebody with a good education and involved in such a thing, no. Are you the one taking these things to children and you are teaching? The children that you are supposed to guide? My sentence was so harsh because of that. I was found guilty and I was given 11 years and I was sent to Langata Women's Prison. That was after, I think, 4 or 6 months, going to court, back and forth. After every 2 weeks, then the judge said, found you guilty, 11 years in prison, and that was it. So meanwhile, I'm in remand prison. Another life that I had never envisaged. Terrible. I don't think I have enough words to describe that because this is an environment I had never, ever imagined. I'd never even had anybody to visit in a prison. So, and here you are, you find yourself in, first of all, even before getting into the room, the vehicle that transported us from Kibera Court to Langata Women's Prison. They used to call them Mariamu those days. This van that is covered with canvas. And it was packed, so full of remandees, those who had been from prison and they have come to do their case, and those who are new, who were being transported, plus the officers. And this van, I don't know if you know those vans that have, that canvas roof. You cannot stand straight. As a tall person like me, you have to bend. And then underneath they used to carry, I think, cow feed, which they used to call michicha. So you are climbing on a mountain of cow feed in this vehicle, which is short, and then you are packed. The officers sit on those 2 benches on both edges, and you guys are standing at the center trying to hold on to the raft so that you don't fall. And as it goes, it takes a corner, you all go one side, or go the other side. So this was the first experience. Then you land in a remand prison. Remand, and this michicha, this cow feed is stinking, smelling. It has a very strong smell. So you endure that smell all through the journey. Then you get into the prison, and another journey begins from there. Life's journey. So you get out, you have your few belongings, maybe your handbag, your clothes, maybe your phone, your watch. You find they open those gates, and you enter into another system that you have never imagined. You find those years there were wardens. They were so harsh. And it's like they were trained that, a suspect or a prisoner is an enemy. They are wielding canes. And there's a language in the prison that you don't know, you have never heard. If they say this, you don't know what it means. Like there's something called kaba, which means squat. So when you get in, you need to squat for the count, head count. So when they say kaba, some of you wonder whether it's a name of somebody they are calling, and you're still, mixed up or dazed up. You find a stroke at your back. Then you have to follow what, you look and find other people squatting. So, so this means, probably it means squatting. So you go down. And then after that, you go to one corner, all of you, and You remove all your clothes, you are left nude, whether they are young girls, whether they are old women, whether there's a daughter and a mother, and then you stay there in that corner nude completely, and they bring out some dirty old, those days they were cream white uniforms, and throw them at one edge. So you all run to scramble for each. It doesn't matter whether you get your size, whether it is torn, whether it is short, whether it is, you know, is each for each and God for us all. And then after that, there is some cold meal of ugali and beans that is at one corner again. You all go for a plate of ugali, and then, and then with the beans. And of course, the first time, if it's your very first time, you know, there are people who have been in and out of prison, in and out of, for petty crimes. So they are used to it, and, you know, they find it okay. But you, from this background, then to this, you look at that food and you say, what? First of all, it is cold. The ugali, the flour that is made the ugali is bad. You know that one that looks like it's about to go bad. It was once probably cream in color, and then it's becoming another, getting to another color. And the beans are full of weevils. So I couldn't eat. I could not just eat. So the others will gobble quickly, those who are used to eat, and then they squeeze you to different, they call them wards. Although a ward is a cell. So you go to different wards. And then I found myself standing at a door with women full in a room, you know, a cube that could probably comfortably hold 35 to 40. There were almost 70 or 80 women, each lined at the edge of the wall with mattresses. Some are singing, some are insulting each other, some are playing cards, some, you know, it's crazy. So I stood in the middle of the room and wondered, where am I? And then they ask you, everyone is shouting. Imagine full this side, full on the other side, and you're standing at the door, and you don't know where to go. And everyone is asking, because the askaris have put you inside, and they have locked the door behind you. You feel the lock. Pop. It was crazy. Until one of them called me and said, come here. Before that, everyone is asking you, what's your name? Why are you here? What crime did you do? Which court were you in? Everyone. You don't know whom to answer. So one beckoned me to go, and I went to sit next to her. And life began from there. Now, when I went to Langata Women's Prison, the Ankomudi reforms, the famous Ankomudi reforms, had not yet started taking place. So, as I said, the warders were very, very cruel, and they saw prisoners as enemies. That's how I would describe it. You know, when you see your enemy coming, automatically you want to fight your enemy, isn't it? I think that is how it was then, because they were always wielding canes in their hands. And, you know, getting a stroke of the cane or several strokes was the norm of the day. Hearing people screaming, being beaten because probably they were making noise in the cell, and they are called to the office, and it was beating and beating and beating. If there was noise in the cell, and, you know, the wardress who's probably manning the door outside felt that you people were being a little bit too noisy, they would open the door and they would come in, all of them, like 6, 7, 10, doesn't matter, and they would start beating all of you. And, you know, you have to squat for you to be beaten. So you squat, and they hit the soles of your feet with those strokes. So it was just chaos then. And then there was no sufficient water that time. You know, there's this 2 kg kasuku that, you know, the kasuku oil comes in about a 2 kilogram container. Those were the buckets. And you can imagine someone with a body frame like mine having to use just that container, the 2 kg, for brushing your teeth, for washing your body, maybe cleaning your clothes. Sometimes as a woman, maybe you have your menses. it was chaotic. So with that kind of lack of adequate water, you can imagine what was happening in the toilet. Because as I've told you, this room was one large room that's supposed to carry maybe 35, 40, but you'd find that you're 70 to 80 congested in that room. So that toilet is one that is shared by all these people at the edge of the room. So there is someone there bathing, there's someone there doing their stuff inside the toilet, there's someone there who's probably trying to brush their teeth, another one is probably washing the clothes. So you are looking at where to step, because half the time when this little water that gets into the hole comes up, then it comes up with the feces. So you have to try to kind of locate where to step so that you don't step on the feces. It is just by God's grace that people didn't die of cholera then. But most of the time the toilets were full and the room was always stinking. Young children would never visit their parents until after the Uncle Moody Awori reforms. May God bless him and all those who came up with the reforms. Nobody was allowed to see their child when they were below 18. No. And the children who came with their mothers to prison, any child below the age of 4 was allowed to accompany their, the mother was allowed to stay with their child. But was it a conducive environment for a child? No. Because as I've told you, there are all these women sleeping in this room with these children, no privacy, no curtains, no doors, no nothing. So the children are even seeing what they are not supposed to see. And they would ask very crazy questions, when they, the kind of questions children ask when they see a naked woman. And sometimes these children, no diapers. Some mothers were so poor they cannot afford those nappies, so they would use plastic nylon bags to with some funny maybe cotton cloth to wrap the children, so that the urine would not penetrate on the very thin mattresses that they were using to sleep. And you can imagine that is not healthy, because there were no sufficient napkins or diapers, or nobody would bring those kind of things. I remember sometimes, if there were sanitary towels, they would bring some very interesting quality, because I have never seen those kind of sanitary towels out here. I don't know where they used to come from. But I remember a lot of people would have, they would be complaining of scratching themselves because of the quality of those pads. And again, the pads, you would not get them enough supply. You would have to go to the office and prove to the duty officer that you're having your menses. You have to prove, you have to show them that you're actually bleeding. A lot of things happened that one would not like to. It's just that you have to, the memory has to keeps them, but you'd not even want to think that anything like that should happen. One, there's a girl who gave birth in the cell. And I remember that day we had a blackout. In prison, the lights are always on throughout the night. But for some reason, there was darkness that day. So, and this lady, her time for delivery had, reached. And we were out there calling, because as I've told you, the officers sit at the door, at the back of the door. They are always there to hear any commotion. So when there's a problem, in case someone falls sick or there is need to call them, we would shout, "Madam Shida, Madam Shida," meaning Madam problem. So if you have those don't care ones, they would come and say, "What kind of problem? You people shut up and sleep." So we would say, there was this day this girl wanted to, her time for delivery had reached. And we really called out for Madam to open the door for her to go. But she didn't. And she ended up giving birth inside the cell. Sometimes you have even nurses, or if not really nurses, but somebody who's worked in a hospital. So we call, and even older women we called out, they came, they surrounded her and helped her, deliver. And the baby was covered in that, those days, as I've told you, there was no adequate supply of water. So the blankets were full of lice, a lot of lice. So we just cut the blanket, those full of lice blankets, and covered the baby. And, until morning, when they came and took her to the hospital. So, such an incident, giving birth is something that, it is by God's grace for you to have a natural delivery. That was one incident. Another is when some two ladies were fighting for a kasuku. This kasuku, I've told you, the 2 kg container. Because it's not marked. They all look alike. They all look the same. So if you don't have a very special mark on your kasuku, you'd easily take somebody else's. And so they were fighting for this. And the wardens had that commotion. Oh my God. When they opened that door. They beat you with those canes, and the kind of shoes they wear? You'd get the cane and they would kick you with those boots. You get the cane and they beat you with those boots. And when they got in, they wouldn't care that we slept on those mattresses. With their boots, they would step on the mattresses all over and scatter you people everywhere. It was bad. It was bad. Those 2 girls were beaten and beaten and beaten. And so when one was tired of the beating, she wanted to escape through the door. It's only one door at the edge. I think she wanted to try and run, and as she was trying to escape, she tripped on an officer. And the officer fell down. And the rest, I cannot even explain to you. Because they said, oh, so you want to fight with us? So you want to fight with me? And they rained on her. And remember, this is after beating and beating and beating. What could we do? You can't talk. You can't shout. Because if you do, you'll be the next. And that's how terrifying it was those days. Then another incident, a lady tried to escape. She used the tunnel. The toilet has this what do you call it? The septic tank. You can lift the cover. I don't know how she got into that thing, and she walked, Langata prison where it is. And she walked all through this channel up to Kibera. And she came out through Kibera. So when they were doing the head count, they count you 5 times a day just to ensure that no one has escaped. So when they realized one person was missing, there's some funny whistle. It has some very, very bad sound. They blow it, and everybody knows that there's a problem. We would all go to the cells. They would lock you up, and all the officers would go out in search of this person who has escaped. So I don't know. This girl was just unlucky. Apparently, she had entered into one bachelor's house, and the guy locked her, from outside, and he went. But there are children who are playing around there. Kibera, somehow, when you are at Langata prison, when we were just walking around the compound, you can see the people down in Kibera. It's a little bit lower, so we would see them. So when we are up there, I think they would also see us. And they know the uniform. And as the officers went asking, the kids said, yeah, she entered in that house. And they went and found her there. Let me not even say what happened to her. You can just imagine the kind of beating that she got. And on top of that, then they take you to court, and the judge adds you another sentence, apart from what she was already serving. Those are just a few, some of the crazy incidences that I saw. There were plenty otherwise. And so that is what made me rethink. And a lot of times, those days, by the way, we were not allowed to listen to the radio. There was one radio that was being manned from the office of the duty officer of that day, and they would only, they put speakers in the cells, and we would only listen to Biblia Usema Studios, I think they're in Kijabe, or Pastor Muiru. So Pastor Muiru was such a darling to the prisoners, because that's the only person they would put, when he's preaching, and would listen. No reading or writing materials. There was nothing like that. We would only read the Holy Bible, And I remember those first 2 years I would read the Bible from Genesis to Revelations, you know. Finish all the Old Testament, start the New, finish the... Then I start from Revelations again to Genesis. So I would just read back, forth, back, forth. So that's the only literature that we were allowed to have. After being in Lang'ata for so long, almost 2 years, 3 years, I realized that, you know, things were not going to change. So I'd rather accept my fate and move on with my life. I started listening to men, great men and women of God, who would come to Lang'ata to give us hope. And from their teachings, I realized that nothing takes God by surprise. Nothing happens in our lives that God does not know. And that this was just a page, a chapter in my life, and after some time it was going to pass. Definitely I was highly depressed. The first year, 2 years, I lost a lot of weight. And at some point I even thought I would lose my mind. But with the encouragement of these great men and women of God, and then they started bringing in counselors, and thanks to Madam Nyasinga, may God really bless you, because she took me through a lot of counseling sessions, and then I came to terms with what I was going through, and that's when I started writing my story. I said, let me put it in writing. Maybe one day it will help 1 or 2 women or even men who could be going through, if not the same thing that I went through, but anything difficult in their lives, or anything they perceive to be a difficulty in their lives. So mine was to put up my story to be an encouragement and a lesson to anyone who cared to listen. Mark you, this time we were still not allowed pen and paper. But you know, when you are convicted to do something, you do it no matter what. So I started writing on tissue paper with pencils that ladies used to hide from court so that they can write letters to their boyfriends at committee. As for me, tissue paper was not really a problem, because remember, my mother was able to come to visit me. My relatives were able to come visit. My colleagues used to come to visit me. So I had enough supply. If anything, I would supply maybe those who didn't have. So I had enough supply of almost everything I required. Because even my so-called husband, he would come. And because he didn't want the embarrassment of being associated with prison, he would tell them he was my brother. But he would come and he would bring for me money, and he would bring for me stuff. Money after the reforms, when we now had the shop. Of course, before we would never have. So I can basically say, after accepting everything that was going on around my life, things started changing for the better. And then came Uncle Moody's reforms. And I was there. And came Madam Wanini Kireri, who was, you know, upbeat about the reforms. And she realized that I had qualities of a leader. She made me the headmistress of the school. I was the head of, you know, beauty pageants. I used to write poems and drama plays for the inmates. Life now began to change. I was made a trustee, and a trustee in the prison, you know, is like the head girl in a school. So I had priority. I was the connection between the soldiers and the inmates. So I was in between, until some soldiers or even some wardens even became jealous, because the officers loved me so much, the officers at the top. And now these were learned, educated people, you know, people who had gone to school very well. And they understood the need for making this a correctional facility rather than a punitive center. And she told the wardens to stop all those caning, and all those red canes were thrown. You know, they were a thing of the past. And the whole place became so different. And I witnessed this, both eras. The school, we did the first KCSE, Kenya Certificate of Primary Education, because we started with the with the primary, and then we went to secondary, and we did so well. And from there, and then there are a lot of interviews would come. How did you do this? How did you do that? And now my book, because Faraja, may God bless them too, because they brought a lot of things in the prisons, the beds, televisions, radios, library, books, a lot of things. When now I was made to head the school, your guess is as good as mine. My tissue paper, book, remember? I now had computers. I was computer literate. So I did my book myself in the computer. And Father Peter, may God rest his soul in peace, we lost him a few months ago. He talked to Daughters of St. Paul's, and they were willing to publish my book, though there are some other American evangelists who also had gotten some, people abroad who are willing to publish it. But I had already made a contract with the Daughters of St. Paul's. So it was published and it was good, it sold well. And life just changed. The prisons became clean, there was adequate supply of water, there were beds, there was enough bedding. The quality of the food changed, kidogo, a little, you know. The place became so clean, and Langata became a model prison, you know. And I witnessed all that. Why I did not serve 11 years is because this lady who, should I say, we got into business with, was arrested by the American government. And should I call it karma? She was brought to Langata prison to go and answer for charges in the United States. And by the time she was brought there, I was a trustee. I was the boss. You know, like the story of Joseph and his brothers. So I was there, I was free, I was walking all over, I was a friend to the bosses, and she was thrown into that cell inside there. And the only thing I did is I asked the officers to allow me to speak with her, because I really wanted to ask her just one question. And they allowed me, and we went to the office, and I asked her why. Even after all happened, you didn't even bother to send a lawyer to come and find out how they could help me? Why? And she told me she was sorry, and she thought that she was going to come out, and after that she was going to help me. But you see, this was after almost 4 years. So I told her it's okay. She thought she would leave, she never left, because the government of the US government, they're very serious. So they asked the president to allow them to extradite her, and he did. And she was taken to the US, and the prosecutors in the United States wanted me to be a state witness. How they got to know about me is through a relative of hers who went and told the US government that they are so sure that I didn't know what I was doing. And when they asked me if I was willing to be a state witness, I thought about it, and I said if my being a state witness over there could save 1 or 2 people, then why not? Because I had nothing against her. I was prepared to serve my sentence and finish. So I accepted, and my papers were organized very quickly, and I followed her to the United States, the first ever prisoner to travel to the United States of America. And it was a bit funny, because, you know, when I was traveling, I had to be escorted by two wardens from Kenya. Of course, they brought their marshals from America. There were 2. And now, you know, when we arrived at the airport, you know, their system is different from ours. They wanted to chain me, you know, chain my hands, my legs, my waist. I say, hey, no, I have not committed any crime in your country. I've never been chained in my country. So if that's the case, let's forget the whole story. But you know, the officers were ready to travel. These people really convinced me that we really must go. How can we go back and tell people now we are back again, we didn't travel? And everybody really was looking for an opportunity to take this trip. So anyway, I accepted and we went. And when I went to US, and I think that's why I'm so passionate about asking our government or whoever is in charge to change our prisons. The prison that I went to Arlington County Jail, because I was still a prisoner, so I was taken to a prison. The officers, of course, were taken to hotels. I didn't know that I was in prison, Justus. I was perplexed. I said, what? They take is it the temperature, the blood, to just check if you have if your health is good. I was brought a dress from the laundry in a hanger. Oh my God, I was taken to a room. I thought, is this really, am I really in prison or it's a mistake? My room, with the remote control was on the table. I started changing channels. I went to the bathroom. I opened the tap, hot water. I said, what? I'm taking a shower right now. Then I came, within a short time, somebody knocked at the door. They said, tea or coffee? Hey? I said, tea. My goodness, it was good. And I said, man, maybe God wants me to see this. I don't know. I will talk about it until one day somebody somewhere will see sense into making our prisons, conducive. Not for people to go and enjoy, but at least let them live like human beings, I had proper beddings and a bed. I had a study table in my own room. No cover. You don't squat when they want to count. Of course, there's head count, but, at the door, there is a glass. Almost halfway through the door is glass, so that you just stand at the door. And the warders, I don't know what they call them there, but let's say wardresses. They just pass. When it's time for head count, I think there's a bell, they ring, and then everybody stands at the door. So you just stand at the door and you say, hi, and they go. No squatting, And you call them by name. There's nothing like madam. If she's Jane, she's Jane. But here, if you want to address a wardress, even if you want to ask for water for drinking, Madam Jane, naomba I want to drink water. Madam Jane, Madam, I want to go to the toilet, Madam. Madam, it's just like that. I don't know who brought that system, and they don't do that. I just opened the door, there are people playing badminton. There, you can go. I said, my goodness, I wish, even if we don't reach this level, I wish our country would raise our levels just a little bit. We get out from those funny colonial buildings, They traumatize you in the first place. You get traumatized by just looking at the building, I hope one day we shall reach there. The case was on for about a month. And of course, they found her guilty and she was jailed for 24 years. And she served and finished. And she's back. So I came back to Lang'ata. Imagine after the 5-star. I came back to Lang'ata and of course they started asking for my release, the American government. And because of, how can I say, bureaucracies of letters passing from one office to another, it took 1 year, another full year, and I was released. So I was called to the office by Madam Grace, and I asked myself, because when we had guests coming, like maybe the ministers or very important people, they would call me to the office to plan for what the inmates would do, the entertainment, if there was any poems, and in fact, everything, the program would be upon me. So I thought that this was one of those days. So I thought, maybe tomorrow we have guests. So I'm called to this office and Madam tells me to sit. Madam Grace was not, how can I say, she was not an officer who would just smile anyhowly, That was her nature. Not that she meant anything bad, but we were used to her, not the smiley type. So this day she called me and she was really smiling. And she said, She said, Saga, do you know why I've called you here? I said, is it about to visit us tomorrow or in the days to come? And she said, no, I've called you to tell you that the president has pardoned you. I said, what? At first it didn't register. So she saw that I didn't hear. It's like it didn't get into me. So I sat. And she asked me, did you hear what I said? I said, yes, what did you say? She said, you are free. So I asked her, free? Free, how? She said, you have been freed by the president. So you can go home, but I don't want you to go home today. So that we can have a small ceremony tomorrow. We can call the press because you have been doing so well for the prison. I said, no. Madam, no, I don't want. We can do those ceremonies another day. If I'm really free to go, I am going now. She said, are you sure? I said, I am so sure. Do you have a phone? She gave me a phone. And I had promised myself that anytime I'm released from the prison, I will not go home straight. I wanted to go and dedicate a thanksgiving to God because of having sustained me through thick and thin for all these years. So I had a place where I wanted to go for prayers in Ngong. It's a prayer house. So I was to go there for 3 days, and after that, I go home. So when I called my daughter, she was now old enough, I called her and told her, Mommy, I'm free, but I'm not coming home today. I'm going to Ngong to pray, and after 3 days, I'll be with you guys home. And she said, no, Mama, if you are free, I must come and see you. So people came, but I was adamant. I told them I'd already made a covenant with God that I'm going to pray and just thank Him for having kept me alive, because remember those first 3-4 years in prison were bad. Those days when we had no water. Remember, you could just store water in one kasuku and maybe brush your teeth and maybe the water has been infected. So I was sick, but God saw me through. Even though my mom, God took her away, I blamed myself for so many years. And I told myself it were not for what I got myself into, maybe she would still be alive till today. But God has a way of healing, as I said. So He has healed my heart. I've accepted that it was fate. It was meant to be. And as I say, nothing takes God by surprise. That was the graph of my life, and that was how it was meant to be. And being in Langata was just a phase, a chapter, which is past, and I have turned that chapter into a purpose. So now, as I've said, having been in the prison and having gone through what I went through, I feel so much conviction on going back and giving back to those who are going through what I went through, or probably even worse, or maybe better, but just going to give them hope, and to take to those prisons that are still back, and those who have never been visited. There are people who, when they get into prison, nobody wants to see them. Even their own people never go there. So you find, like women, maybe somebody lacks panties, pads, toothbrush, toothpaste, the basic things. So once in a while when I'm able to, I go to visit them, to give them hope, to tell them God loves them and I love them too. I tell them I went through it. If I went through it and finished, they can also go through it and finish, because some people take away their lives. Some people just strangle themselves when they are on the verge of leaving because they don't know where to go to. That stigma of society, being stigmatized and being, called names. And so I tell them, you don't have to take away your life. If you go to my channel, you'll find more stories that I've not talked to. By the way, my channel is called Saga Prison Stories, just Moments with Justus. Guys, go to my channel, see what we do, subscribe, like, share. Maybe your subscription may help me buy one toilet paper for somebody in there. So please don't just view, subscribe, like, share, comment, and tell me you came from Moments with Justus. My book, The Deadly Moneymaker, the one I wrote when I was in prison, is available on Amazon Kindle. You can read it and buy it from there. You would have also promoted me in one way or another. And as I say, nothing takes God by surprise. That was the graph of my life, and that was how it was meant to be. And being in Lang'ata was just a phase, a chapter, which is past, and have turned that chapter into a purpose.